22. Criminal tomfoolery. November 30th. That was the date set for my trial. Not even a full week after I was first interviewed, it was obvious that someone fudge wanted to speed this process along. It also meant I had just about 2 days to prepare my defense. Not like it would matter all that much. My jury would be composed almost entirely of purebloods, and they'd be trying to convict me not because they thought I was particularly guilty, but because they didn't think I was one of them, and that made me easy to blame. The only thing that would matter to them would be the damnable reveal of my damnable heritage. It was an infuriating issue of societal corruption and prejudice, but one I could only take advantage of at the moment. Andromeda had been kind enough to offer up her husband's services for the trial. He was a solicitor, and even though he'd never met me, he was willing to defend me simply because his wife asked. Edward Tonks seemed a good man from his letters. I hated to drag him into Fudge's crosshairs with me. Edward advised me that the best thing I could do for myself during the trial was keep my cool. Fudge and company would want me to rise to their bait. They'd try and push me until I made a scene so they could add additional charges or even see me convicted on the spot. My job was to do the opposite of what they expected. To that end, I spent most of the 2 days leading up to the trial rounding out the disciplines I thought would be useful. Increases of the past month. Body, 33 plus 5 equals 38 100ths plus. Mind, 42 plus 4 equals 46 100ths plus. Soul, 35 plus 6 equals 41 100ths plus. Social. Plus 7 to speech, plus 8 to persuasion, plus 6 to perception, plus 5 to teaching, plus 6 to notoriety, plus 4 to influence, plus 2 to seduction, plus 3 to willpower. Speech 30 plus 7 equals 37 100ths, persuasion 22 plus 8 equals 30 100ths, perception 22 plus 6 equals 28 100ths, teaching 42 plus 5 equals 47 100ths, notoriety 9 plus 6 equals 15 100ths, influence 9 plus 4 equals 13 100ths, seduction 46 plus 2 equals 48 100ths, willpower 39 plus 3 equals 42. Magic. Plus 2 to magic theory, plus 2 to wanded magic, plus 1 to charms, plus 1 to dada, plus 6 to wandless magic, plus 5 to occlumency. Magic theory 62 plus 2 equals 64 100ths, wanded magic 53 plus 2 equals 55 100ths, charms 51 plus 1 equals 52 100ths, dada 51 plus 1 equals 52 100ths, wandless magic 27 plus 6 equals 33 100ths, occlumency 33 plus 5 equals 38 100ths. Creation. Plus 5 to ritual magic, plus 5 to wards, plus 3 to enchanting. Ritual magic 30 plus 5 equals 35 100ths, wards 30 plus 5 equals 35 100ths, enchanting 30 plus 3 equals 33 100ths. Combat. Plus 8 to tactics. Tactics 32 plus 8 equals 40. The increases this past month were half thanks to training Heather and half thanks to my daily routine as a teacher and student of the grind. The system seemed to like me being the center of so much mostly female attention, which went straight into increasing my social skills. But I was also still putting in time to research and practice new charms, rituals, and tactics among other disciplines whenever I could spare a moment. The days leading up to the trial passed way too fast. I spent some of that time with Heather and Hermione. I spent some with Tonks, going over what I should expect from a trial in front of the Wizengamot. I spent some with Luna, Septima, and my recently reconnected mother. But I found myself spending most of my time just meditating, a different form of grind, so that I wouldn't end up spilling a pure blood. Only the day after Heather was poisoned in what the castle was now calling Britain's poorest attempt at line theft, excitement once again returned to the Great Hall. It seemed that it never left these days. The Weasley twins and their invention of a wizarding on parchment forum were just about the only thing keeping the students of the castle running with how much gossip flowed through magical ink. Somehow the castle's staff still hadn't found out about WWO, but it was only a matter of time. It was quickly becoming something the students held sacred, like Quidditch, or which broom closets were conveniently never checked. Nothing beat having cheap access to all of the gossip of Hogwarts and her visiting schools though. Seeing the success of their invention, the Weasley twins were already planning on expansion. The WWO would be a cornerstone of their future joke shop. It would be the thing that made them wizarding millionaires. Their first expansion to their invention, their key cash cow product, would capitalize on the buzz and excitement surrounding their newest assistant professor's upcoming trial. Some Muggle-born friends helped them with the inspiration, and Fred and George completely implemented the idea after vigorously studying the visual components of the Marauders map and a wizarding camera they had on hand. Hogwarts would soon know about the events of Professor Atlas' trial before the Daily Prophet did. The excitement that visited the Hogwarts Great Hall the morning after Heather's poisoning wasn't related to WWO, but it certainly made its appearance on the various charmed parchments around the castle afterward. Breakfast was just about finished and most students were preparing to leave for their scheduled classes. Stragglers filtered in irregularly, grabbing a bit of toast or fruit to keep them tided over until lunch since they'd missed breakfast. For one of those stragglers, however, missing a meal was sacrilege of the highest order. Ronald Bilious Weasley woke up late as always. He ran out of his dorm and down to the Great Hall, still an utter mess from waking up. Once he arrived, he wasted no time piling a plate high with food and digging in like a starving animal. People gave him the same distance they would a starving animal as well, knowing better than to let a stray, misplaced hand potentially get caught in the devouring crossfire. Seemingly nothing would stop Ronald Bilious Weasley until he'd eaten his fill. That Hogwarts adage was tested soon after though, not by something reasonable like the possibility of being late to class, but by a storm of parental fury descending upon the Great Hall. Those who knew the Weasley family would have expected that fury to be maternal. It was not. The doors to the Great Hall swung open with a thunderous bang, startling everyone who wasn't trying to stuff their face with the ferocity of a wolverine. Through the now open doors strode an incarnation of red-headed rage. Ever so slightly portly and with a face as red as his head, most who knew the sudden intruder could barely recognize him. Arthur Weasley was on a warpath, storming up to his youngest son without detour or distraction. "Arthur, what a pleasant surprise," Dumbledore greeted from the staff table. "What brings you to Hogwarts unannounced, my friend?" Arthur Weasley's reply was curt and tense but not disrespectful. "Family business, Albus. I would appreciate it if you would stay out of it for now." No other explanation was given because no other explanation was needed. Dumbledore nodded sadly, understanding and motioning that he would not interfere. Based on Arthur's countenance, there were only two possible outcomes to this in Albus, mind for the second youngest Weasley. Death, or dishonor. Arthur's answer set pure bloods murmuring and whispering. The phrase, family business, had certain implications to it that couldn't be ignored. Arthur wasn't here as a ministry employee or even a father. He was here as Lord Weasley with all of the weight and power a pure-blood lord, even one with such a fallen standing as House Weasley, could bring to bear. And he was here to deal with those under his banner like a king dealt with deserters. Somehow, throughout this all, Ron Weasley barely looked up from his food to acknowledge his Lord Father. He all but ignored the lord of his household in favor of the fleeting chance of a continued meal. The other pure-blood students were baffled, astounded really, by the disrespect the second youngest Weasley was currently showing. Even the Muggle-born students in the room were slightly scandalized by the lack of reaction from Ronald Bilious Weasley. The cold, almost distant quality of Arthur's voice as he spoke sent eerie chills down pure-blood spines. "Come, Ronald. We have some things to talk about, as a family." Ronald Bilious Weasley was seemingly ignorant of the danger he was in. "You mean I get to skip classes? Wicked. Just a mo, Dad. Lemme finish eating. Now, Ronald." "Mo," the second youngest Weasley responded through stuffed cheeks. Arthur's patience would not be tested at the moment though. His hand shot out like a whip, seizing the ear of his youngest son and twisting something fierce. Ron Weasley cried out, spewing food and making a general mess of his plate. Arthur bodily pulled Ron up by his ear, nearly tearing it off in the process. It was all Ron could do to submit to the sudden movement. Magic and rage swirled around Arthur Weasley. It was a concerning sight to see from an adult wizard and a pure-blood lord no less. He dragged Ron behind him, disregarding the way the younger Weasley squirmed and screamed in pain. As he did, Arthur's other hand went to his belt. Pure-blood and Muggle-born alike winced at that development. Arthur's belt whipped from around his waist. It wound tight around Arthur's free fist to dangle menacingly at his side. The clink of the buckle momentarily silenced Ron and an expression of utter terror overtook his face before his screams of pain were replaced by pleas for mercy. As they exited the Great Hall, the doors silently swung shut behind them like magic. The remaining inhabitants of the Great Hall were left reeling. They might have been used to the boisterous dynamics of the Weasley family but no one was prepared for the patriarch to storm the castle in search of his youngest son. It was more shocking than 1,000 howlers from Molly Weasley. Slowly and shakily, normalcy and routine returned to the Great Hall. Students looked to Dumbledore for guidance on how they should be reacting. He calmly buttered a bit of toast, not even acknowledging what had just happened as reality. Taking that indifference as a cue, the students went about their business as usual. Ronald Bilious Weasley would not return to Hogwarts Castle and the castle's gossip was left guessing as to the reason why. Narcissa Black Malfoy, she'd officially reclaimed her maiden name when she took up temporary regency of House Black, twiddled her fingers impotently. There was not much she could do at the moment other than wait for a reply. Upon seeing the article in the Prophet about her potential nephew, Narcissa hadn't panicked. Panic was beneath her, but she did start to make plans. Plans for preserving her house and bloodline in the face of this political persecution. Anyone with half a brain could tell that the minister was missing his pocket-stuffing, pure-blood money bag. With Lucius out of the picture, Fudge's chances for re-election grew more tenuous. There was no doubt in Narcissa's mind that he was already reaching out to like-minded members of society to secure another steady stream of funding. In the meantime though, Fudge was lashing out. He was trying to find someone to blame for Lucius' death along with several other pure-blood lords, his part in the Cup riot, and his sudden lack of appropriate bribes. Unfortunately, his sights for that blame seemed to be set on Atlas White. Narcissa's concern for Atlas was not entirely out of the goodness of her heart. Almost nothing she did nowadays was. But she was 90% sure that he was her nephew by blood. That he was the true black heir and the future of her dying birth house. And that was enough for Narcissa to consider giving him her aid where she could. She sent him a letter. One offering him the support of House Black and herself in showing him the ropes of pure blood society. If, on the off chance, Atlas was not secretly Bella's son, the letter would be easy enough to dismiss as a concerned citizen offering polite assistance. If, as she suspected, he was, then Narcissa would be doing her duty as House Regent and couldn't be censured for lack of action. But until he replied, she could do nothing. Dobby, Narcissa asked in surprise as her former house elf popped into the room. Dobby just glared at her, not saying a word. He produced an envelope and placed it on the desk in front of her. Before Narcissa could say anything more, Dobby popped out of the room again. She was left more than a little confused with only the delivered letter as an explanation. After cautiously checking it for charms and hexes, Narcissa opened the letter and read. Hi, Sissy, I saw you sent a letter to my dear perfect baby boy. Unfortunately, Atlas is preoccupied with trial preparations at the moment. But he said I could reply for him. So I am, and I just wanted to say. If you ever try to steal my baby boy from me again by offering to teach him the ropes, I will cut you, Sissy. I will cut you so deep that you will bear the scars for the rest of your short miserable life. Anyway, love you, we should catch up now that I've broken that damned marriage contract. I've been dying to introduce my dear sisters to my perfect baby boy. All of my love and kisses, Bella. Shaky hands put the letter back down. Good Merlin, though she was more obsessive and possessive and everything in between when it came to her son, that was certainly Bella. Narcissa would have to change some of her plans now that her suspicions had been confirmed and she knew Bella had reunited with Atlas. Maybe even bring Andromeda in on this. As the oldest of the three of them, she always did have a way of wrangling Narcissa and Bella. It seemed that the Black Sisters would be having a reunion soon enough. The Quibbler. Join us for a confidential look inside the fight against Operation Titanfall. Transcript of interview between Agent X and Informant Titan. As recorded by Junior Operative Plum. Agent XX, thank you for joining me today, Informant Titan. Informant Titan T-Wah. Informant Titan. X, did you not want this interview to stay anonymous for the security of your operation? T exasperated _ Junior Operative Plum, what did you tell him? X, strike that name from the record. Junior Operative Plum P on it. Please cooperate, Informant Titan. This is for your own safety. T, fine, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. X, the code name I currently answer to is Agent X. T, of course, thank you for having me, Agent X. X, very good. Now, I shall waste no more time with pleasantries. Tell me, Titan, do you believe the current leading theory that Sirius Black has long since been replaced by an imposter? And that the man the Ministry is really looking for is none other than Dramatic Paws Stubby Boardman? T, I could not confidently speak here or there on the subject. Sirius Black's actions after the summer of '81 certainly don't sound like him though. I don't think the idea that he is an imposter, or that he didn't do what he's accused of or even that we simply don't have the whole story should be instantly dismissed. X, I see, you've passed the first test, Titan. T, test. X, yes, it can't be easy to not lie while keeping your confidentiality. The fact that you can acknowledge the truth at all is a miracle. You truly are the skilled agent that Junior Operative Plum told me about. T, I'm glad to have proven myself. Agent X. X, your second test, if you so choose to accept it, is simple. How many legs does the elusive crumplehorn snarkak have? T, does the horn count? X, wonderful, a simply masterful answer, Titan. You deflected from the dangerous truth that the Ministry doesn't want you to know and yet still asked a question to make our audience think more on the subject. Those are the types of questions that will eventually reveal the truth. T, I must say, Agent X, I am impressed by your thorough testing. Shall we get to the main topic of this interview now that you've assured yourself of my skill and discretion? X, yes, of course. Thank you for humoring an old paranoid agent, Titan. Your public identity was recently in the papers, was it not? T, Yes, though isn't this interview supposed to be anonymous? X. Don't worry, your name won't be printed once throughout this article. T. People will still. Sigh yes, my public identity was recently in the news. X. Difficulties with the law, correct. I can certainly understand running into those in our line of work. T. We don't do remotely the same thing, Z. Agent X. X. Not our public identities, Titan. Our real jobs. The things we do in the shadows. T. Ah, how silly of me. I suppose I've been, undercover for too long. X. I perfectly understand. Now, back to the question. Difficulties with the law. T. You could say that. Certain people within the ministry seem to have it out for me. Of course, others within the ministry have helped, but this pressure seems to come from the top. X. The top, you say. Could this have something to do with the Rotfang conspiracy? T. Unfortunately, I can neither confirm nor deny that supposition. X. What about the goblin meat pie conspiracy? T. Remind me of that one again. X. My paper. Agency. My agency's theory is that Minister Fudge is having his enemies within the goblin nation removed from the picture and baked into meat pies. I've personally gathered oodles of evidence. Oodles, I tell you. T. Well, I did say the pressure comes from the top. X. Gasp, you think your situation is the result of a personal grudge from the minister? T. I wouldn't put it past him. X. Extraordinary. Not for you, of course, Titan. My condolences. But for our readers. T. It is a rather remarkable story. X. Do you have any plans to deal with this top-down persecution? Should we expect a sudden and mysterious death in the minister's future? T. No, at least. Glances at P. Not yet. X. But you do have a plan. T. Of course, I will be fighting these charges the legal way. I've already acquired a solicitor. It wouldn't do to reveal too much about my skill set, you understand. And I must set a good example. For the youth, it's all very calculated and coordinated. I firmly believe everything will work out. X. So Operation Titanfall will fail. T. Operation what? Is that what you're calling it? X. It fits, doesn't it? T. I suppose it does. Yes, Operation Titanfall will fail. Those responsible won't know what hit them. X. Very good, that should help put our readers at ease. T. Will that be all? X. About Operation Titanfall, yes. But since I have you here, will you allow me to satisfy a few more curiosities? Agent to agent. T. By all means. I.O. Junior Operative Plum, that much at least. X. Splendid. Now, I've recently been experiencing a very itchy scalp. Do you think it could be lice or merely dandruff? Would you recommend I switch shampoo? Start using conditioner? Tell me, Titan, how do you achieve your luscious locks? T. Sigh, I suppose I brought this on myself. Come here, let me show you a few family spells my previously absent father recently showed me. Is that all we can charge him with? There has to be more. Cornelius Fudge demanded, slamming his fist on his desk in anger. Of course, Cornelius, Dolores Umbridge simpered. There's always something more we can pin on him. I'm sure the good professor will give us a reason to hold him in contempt of court. Yes, I'm sure he will, Fudge said consideringly. Cornered animals always tend to lash out, don't they? How appropriate, Cornelius, Umbridge tittered. Shame we can't get anything more out of this. Yes, quite a shame. But he is just a mudblood, Cornelius. It's not as if he has any properties or money that we could, confiscate, for the good of the ministry. The reminder seemed to set Fudge off again. Damn mudblood. He doesn't even have the decency to line our pockets. Umbridge reminded him of another unfortunate reality, and to think he had the absolute gall to disrupt our perfect society so much. Even to the point of murdering good, upstanding citizens. Fudge sighed, it's too bad Lucius isn't here to see this. He would have loved giving the boy his comeuppance. Indeed, yet another of the mudblood's terrible crimes. Fudge paused for a moment. Are we sure we can pin that on him? Quite sure, Cornelius, Umbridge reassured. I've found plenty of evidence that he was the person responsible for the riot itself, stealing your wand, and murdering 4 pure-blood lords. But will it stand up to close scrutiny? After his disastrous interview, we already know Bones is willing to give him a fair shake, Fudge pressed. Umbridge sneered, do not worry about the traitorous Madame Bones, Cornelius. She will pay for her betrayal as well. To think she could even think of going against your orders. Due process. Such a disgrace to proper society, that one. Her vehement reassurance seemed to relax Fudge somewhat. Why yes, too right, Dolores. I shall trust your work. As you should, Umbridge nodded matter-of-factly. So we're all set for the trial. Have we leaked the list of charges to the Dark faction? If they know the boy is responsible for the deaths of many of their own, they'll jump to support his conviction. Yes, yes, Cornelius, Umbridge waved dismissively. The good Lord Not has promised his support. He seems to be positioned to take over Lucius' place in our good society. Very good. Fudge's smile was one of great relief. Sebastian has always struck me as a man who understood the lengths that must be reached to keep society running. He's not as wealthy as Lucius was, but he should work well enough as a quick patch while we wait for widowed Narcissa to come out of mourning. Umbridge tutted, shaking her head sadly, for a woman of such good breeding to be widowed so young. We simply must nail this mudblood to the wall, Cornelius. For Narcissa and for Lucius. If we do, there's still a good chance the Ministry can get our hands on the vaunted Malfoy fortune. Fudge rubbed his hands together, only just stopping himself from cackling. Umbridge's smile was just as greedy. I think this calls for a celebration, Cornelius. Fudge sighed, obviously conflicted and looking forward to this as much as he wasn't. Fine, you know the drill. The bag's in my top drawer. Face the wall, hike up that hideous pink skirt. And try not to moan too much. It kills this whole thing for me. +1 to occlumency. Occlumency 38 + 1 = 39 1/100ths. Well, I told myself. One last occlumency level couldn't hurt anything. My deep, rhythmic breathing continued, calm and serene even as persecution stared me in the face. In and out, I ignored the chaos around me. I would keep my cool. I would not rise to their bait. I would prevail. My body moved through the Ministry as if on autopilot. Through the bustling lobby, dodging people and little paper airplanes with ease. My meditative state never wavered. I caught an elevator down to the level in the Ministry dedicated to courtrooms, keeping my focus turned inward the entire time. The elevator lurched sideways and up and down and all around until it finally came to a stop. I stepped out onto a much calmer and less crowded floor. A very important person was waiting for me there. Professor White, Edward Tonks greeted with a smile. One that I returned. Please, call me Atlas. He greeted my shadow as well. Hello, sweetie. Ready to help your old man do his job? Tonks shook her head with fond exasperation. Come on, Dad, you know I can't show bias like that. I'm working. I know, but all you have to do to help me is the job you were assigned to. Tonks smirked. Then, yeah, I guess I am ready to help an old man do his job. Edward smiled, but his tone was serious. Very good, Tonks. You have my thanks for making sure my client made it to his trial. Come along then, we don't want to keep anyone waiting. I fell into step beside my solicitor and Tonks followed close behind us. Edward led us through twisted corridors deep within the Ministry, seemingly long familiar with the unintuitive layout of this level. As he did, I tried to make conversation while keeping up my mental control. Are we late? Not as such, Edward sighed. Fudge tried to change the time of the trial at the last minute though. He does that often with trials like these, so thankfully, I was expecting it. I got here early to block any motions meant to make things more difficult for you. Thank you for that. You've already more than earned your pay, Edward. I'd been expecting blockages and difficulties but not misdirection like that. Not a problem, Atlas. Just doing my job. If you really want to thank me, you'll induct my wife back into the family after your reveal and you assume acting headship. Of course, Edward, that shouldn't be a problem at all. After so long alone, I could use all the family I can get. And I'm sure Sir, our shaggy friend, was planning on getting around to that when he could. Wait, Tonks interrupted from behind us. Does that mean we'll have to change our name? No, your mother and I are more than happy as Tonks, Edward answered his daughter. This is more to be completely thorough and due to a healthy amount of spite from your mother. So what do we know about the trial? Who's the prosecution? Who's the judge? Is there a jury? I asked, changing the subject. I knew the answers to all of those questions but wanted to check again to keep my nerves at bay. Edward sighed and explained, the prosecution is headed by a pure-blood named Matthias Gage. He leans toward the dark but he's surprisingly competent as a solicitor. Fudge has managed to install himself as the lead judge. His undersecretary and Amelia are the other two, the wingers. I've challenged that appointment but haven't been able to get any concrete proof of his bias against you. Thankfully, the final decision isn't just up to him. The entire Wizengamot has gathered to act as your jury. I'm sure Fudge spent a pretty penny of political power to accomplish that on such short notice. I snorted, let's just hope we make this worth their time. I don't think there will be any complaints at the end of the day, Edward smirked. What about support? Can we count on anyone to step up for me? Perhaps, Edward considered. The light faction can at least be counted on to oppose the dark. And since the dark will be supporting Fudge's grudge, that puts the light conditionally on our side. In the end, I bet it will come down to those who remain neutral. Greengrass, Davis, Slughorn, Zabini, etc. They're whose votes we'll have to swing. Wonderful, I said flatly. Why do I feel like I should have campaigned before this trial? Edward chuckled, because it wouldn't have hurt to do so. Quid pro quo and promises are a much better basis of support than appealing to logic and reason. I winced. I'm going to have to see about assigning someone to deal with the political side of my life after this. I very much doubt I'll enjoy that aspect of pure blood life. We phased into silence as we reached the courtroom. Tonks moved in front of us and pushed open the doors, leading me and Edward as if we were going to war. Our entrance drew attention, but the level of chatter in the courtroom didn't die down or falter. The atmosphere was tense between us as we made our way down into the bowl-shaped room. At the head of the room across from the doors sat the judge's bench. It was an ostentatious thing with a tiered wing on either side for the other two judges. Amelia Bones, Cornelius Fudge, and an unfortunate-looking woman already sat at the bench, seemingly waiting for the trial to start. Opposite the bench, the courtroom was arranged in a semicircle of tiered seating. Filling this semicircle were the many members of the Wizengamot who would be observing and voting on today's trial. That participating audience was actually surprisingly diverse. Women, people of color, and even women of color were a part of the august Wizengamot body. Though, I knew they weren't as diverse in another aspect, as basically all of them had to be pure bloods. And the few half-bloods there might as well have been pure bloods. We made our way down to the bottom of the bowl-shaped room to take our seats. Tonks stood off to one side, acting as a visual deterrent but not standing close enough that someone could call foul play. Two tables took up the bottom of the bowl, one for us as defendants and one for the prosecution. Between them in the very center of the room was a chair, draped with chains, that would act as a sort of witness stand. "Order, put the criminal in the chair and let's get started already," Fudge ordered, not even waiting for Edward and I to finish sitting down. "Belay that order," Amelia cut in. "I'm sure Professor White can manage to sit himself down peacefully. And, Cornelius, we haven't even charged him with anything yet. Stow the criminal talk, yeah." Edward gave me an encouraging pat on the back. With a sigh, I moved to comply and sat in the chair that would likely be my home for the next hour or so. The chains draped around the chair rattled, animating themselves to wrap around me like I'd expected. According to Edward, they weren't so much an indication of guilt as they were based on the severity of the accusations levied against the defendant. "Order in the court," Fudge called. "Dolores, if you would read the charges being pressed today." Hem, the unfortunate-looking woman cleared her throat. "Of course, Cornelius, the accused, one Atlas White, must answer to the following charges: inciting chaos, criminal tomfoolery, leading the youth astray." "Hold on," Amelia interrupted. "That's not a criminal offense." "Well, it should be." "Keep going, Dolores," Fudge declared. Where was I?" The undersecretary pretended confusion for a moment. "Ah, yes, leading the youth astray, theft of a wand, and finally, 4 counts of first-degree murder of a pure-blood lord." There was chatter and gasps of surprise from the gathered Wizengamot. They obviously weren't all informed of the severity of today's trial. Edward and I had been expecting this, so we simply sat there and took the charges on the chin. Seeing how most of the surprise was from the light and neutral factions, Fudge continued as if it hadn't even happened. Yes, very good, Dolores. How does the accused plead?" I sat back and let Edward speak for me, not guilty of all charges due to extenuating circumstances. "Even the criminal tomfoolery charges?" Amelia inquired, cutting through the scoffs that suddenly filled the room. Edward nodded and Dolores Umbridge pressed further. "What, extenuating circumstances, could excuse murder?" Waiting for the murmurs of agreement to die down, Edward explained: "Duel of conquest, justice, and satisfaction." That answer caused scornful guffaws to fill the courtroom. Edward and I remained silent. Umbridge smirked as if she'd backed us into a corner. Preposterous. The right to duel is only available to pure blood lords. And that circumstance does not explain any charge but the murder. "That information will be revealed as it becomes relevant," Edward stated simply and calmly. "Listen here, Mud," Umbridge began with a hiss before stopping herself. Solicitor Tonks would be well reminded that he and his client are currently answering to the whole Wizengamot and the minister himself. "That's enough, Dolores," Amelia played mediator. "Professor White's plea is accepted for now. Shall we move on to evidence?" "Very well," Umbridge conceded. "The first piece of evidence the prosecution has to present is—" Edward interrupted her to point something out. "I was not aware you were a prosecutor for this case, Undersecretary." "He's got you there, Toad, a dark-skinned goddess of a woman chortled from the tiered seating of the Wizengamot. At least try to keep your bias from showing so blatantly." The undersecretary's face turned a very unappealing shade of puce, but she seemed unwilling to publicly counter a pure blood. Yes, well said, Mistress Sabini. I shall keep your advice in mind going forward. Just Lady Zabini to you, Toad. I wouldn't let you call me by my proper title even if you begged me. Hearing, Mistress, come out of your misshapen mouth is just wrong, Valentina Zabini taunted with a smirk. Through gritted teeth and a put-on smile, Umbridge said, of course, Lady Zabini. But we should really get back to the matter at hand. Prosecutor Gage, if you would begin your case. Matthias Gage was a decently handsome man with a very disarming smile. My thanks, Madam Umbridge. I will do just that now. He turned that disarming smile onto the rest of the Wizengamot as he addressed them. By the accused's own admission, we can place him at the World Cup during the riot. Not to mention the numerous witness testimonies that do the same. Again, by his own admission, we can place Atlas White within the top box of the stadium. He would easily be within range to steal the minister's wand. He paused, waiting for a retort. Edward and I stayed quiet, however, letting him spin his story. We had a plan and nothing we could say now would matter in a few minutes. He blinked in surprise, but as expected, didn't hesitate to take advantage of what he saw to be an opening. Unfortunately, the accused's interview was cut short before he could complete his testimony. But, we do know that he was intimately involved with the riot, once again by his own admission. So ladies and gentlemen of the Wizengamot, I intend to find out what that intimate involvement truly entailed. Gage turned his smile to me, trying to make me feel as if we were all friends here. Now, Professor White. Would you like to continue your testimony? I shrugged, speaking for the first time since I stepped into the courtroom, not particularly. A wave of dumbfounded silence washed over the courtroom. No one was expecting me to just straight up say no. I heard a couple of quiet chuckles briefly break that silence at my bold refusal. Gage's smile faltered slightly. I'm afraid I must insist, Professor White. This is your trial, after all. I simply wiggled myself beneath the chair's chains so I could cross my arms. I understand that. Gage waited for me to say more. When I didn't, his disarming smile fell just a bit further. If you understand, why won't you answer my questions? Don't feel like it. The dumbfounded silence interspersed by growing chuckles continued. Gage turned to Edward, hoping to try a different tactic. Solicitor Tonks. Would you be kind enough to advise your client as to the importance of cooperation? Edward shrugged and answered the same as me, not particularly. Why not? Gage's composure was beginning to visibly crack. Don't feel like it. The chuckles continued to grow until they took over the silence. Me and Edward's coordinated denials seemed to have won over the amusement of many of the neutral purebloods. Whether that would translate to support, I couldn't say. But they were certainly more invested in my case now that my boldness had made them laugh. I even saw Valentina Zabini, the woman who had taunted Umbridge earlier, smirking and eyeing me as if she were a predator. She sent a shiver down my spine, but now was not the time to be distracted by dark-skinned goddesses. Finally, the laughter seemed to get to the judges and prosecution, and Umbridge snapped, enough. Silence. Do you think you can taunt the ministry, boy? Cornelius, I say we just dose him with veritaserum and be done with this whole farce. Yeah, someone in the audience cheered in support. He's just a mudblood, make him spill his brain out his ears. Amelia glared at the offender. Lord Flint, I understand that you are still new to all of this ceremony. This is only your second Wizengamot gathering since your father's death, after all. But we do not accept blatant slurs like the one you just used. Do it again and I will have you silenced for the rest of the trial. Now, Professor White, would you be willing to consent to veritaserum questioning? I nodded, showing Amelia the respect she was due. Yes, I would. As the veritaserum was arranged and retrieved, I allowed myself to relax. This was going about as well as I could have hoped for. We were exactly where we wanted, exactly where Edward and I planned. But after this, the real fun started. An unfamiliar Auror approached my chair with a small bottle, announcing what it was for the court's records. Veritaserum bottle number A25 has been retrieved. I, Auror Perks, can confirm it is still sealed and undisturbed. Applying the standard 3 drops with the accused's consent. I nodded to the man, tilting my head back slightly and opening my mouth. 3 drops of something that might as well have been water landed on my tongue. I blinked, almost expecting some kind of taste from such a potent potion even though I knew better. After waiting a few moments for the potion to take effect, Umbridge grinned maliciously. Wonderful. Now, Cornelius, I hope you would allow me the pleasure of personally questioning this reprobate. That's not your job, Dolores, Amelia all but growled. Fudge waved her off, hiding a grin that was just as malicious as his undersecretary's. I'll allow it. Amelia was forced to compromise or get nothing at all. Fine. But you'll only be permitted 3 questions. Not including the standard question to test if the potion is working, of course. Yes, Umbridge practically ignored Amelia. So glad you could see reason, Madam Bones. She turned that vicious, ugly smile onto me as it morphed into a sneer. Boy. What is your name, date of birth, and, do you have any titles? That isn't the standard question, Amelia grumbled. It was half-assed though because she knew Umbridge had just played right into our hands. I felt my body answer for me, Atlas White Black. Already, the gasps of shock and vehement denials from the rest of the courtroom had begun. The potion didn't care for them one whit. My answer continued. My birthday is May 25, 1974. I currently have only one title that I am aware of. By blood and magic, I am the rightful heir to the House of Black. With my potion-fueled declaration, there was a flash of magic. When it faded, a ring appeared, sitting on my finger. Silence reigned as my claim was recognized by magic and verified by the Veritaserum's hold over me. Then all hell broke loose within the courtroom and Wizengamot. Valentina Zabini probably won't be an important character in this story. That said, I couldn't resist including her along with a few pictures. I've always liked the fanon portrayal of her character. A very rich and successful woman whose husbands always seem to mysteriously die soon after including her in their wills. In other news, there will be another WWO interlude soon. It'll be a live reaction to Atlas trial, as some of you might have picked up from this chapter. That's probably going to be chapter 23.5, the next chapter is the rest of the trial. Sorry not sorry for the cliffhanger. After that will be the Yule Ball and some smut and then I'll finally be able to play with my pure blood goth waifu Daphne Greengrass.